A reading from Mark chapter 7. Now when the Pharisees gathered to Jesus, with some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem, they saw that some of his disciples ate with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands properly, holding to the tradition of the elders. And when they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And there are many other traditions that they observe, such as the washing of cups and pots and copper vessels and dining couches. And the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat with defiled hands?" And he said to them, "Well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, 'This people honours me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. You leave the commandment of God and hold to the tradition of men.'" And he called the people to him again and said to them, "Hear me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside a person that by going into him can defile him. But the things that come out of a person are what defile him. For from within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person." This is a very telling exchange between Jesus and the Pharisees here, because it gets to the root of the matter. It gets to the heart of what it is to be a follower of Christ, what it is to be a Christian, what it is to be changed. And there are two approaches which are being set forward here and being contrasted. And you might say one is an outside in and one is an inside out approach. Now the Pharisees, who, let's remember, were seen as good people in their day, people who really wanted to make sure that the laws of God were kept, they'd come up with lots of traditions over the years. This is the traditions of the elders that you see mentioned in the passage. And these traditions were put in place to make sure that you didn't accidentally break one of the commandments of God. And so it would be things like what you can or can't do on the Sabbath. What constitutes work? Can you walk 400 yards? Well, yes, you probably can. That's not really working. But to walk a mile, particularly in the heat of the Middle East, well, that might be considered to be working. So a tradition arose to say that you couldn't walk more than a mile. That kind of thing. But the idea is that if you do the right things, well, then you're keeping the commandments of God. Jesus takes the opposite view. He says that it's not what you do that is to be policed, but rather the heart needs to be changed. Because in the end, your actions come from your heart. But it's more than your actions that are important. It's your attitudes as well. Look at the kind of thing that Jesus is talking about here. Coveting, wickedness, envy, slander, envy. These things are within us. You can be envious of somebody and they may never know, but that is still something that makes you unrighteous. So Jesus is saying to the Pharisees, you shouldn't be focusing on the external things. You need to focus on the heart. And that's a sobering thought, because the heart, of course, is the core of us. It's the thing we keep hidden from those outsiders. So how do we tackle the things of the heart? How do we put to death the sorts of things that Jesus is talking about? Well, in the end, it's a kind of internal watchfulness. It's when we notice ourselves beginning to envy somebody, well, we pray about it. We take that thought captive and we present it to Christ. It's the habit that is formed over that kind of watchfulness. And we pray because in the end, it is God alone who can transform our hearts. And if our hearts are right, well, then our actions will be right as well. But it'll be an automatic thing. We needn't worry about policing them because they will just come right. So do pay some attention to your heart. Listen again to this list of what Jesus says. sexual immorality, evil thoughts, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. And if, as I've read that list, your conscience has been pricked by any of those things, pray about them, watch yourself for them, and as you start to feel them bubbling up within you, pray about them again. Acknowledge that they're just feelings and they can go and be changed. And then you'll start to practice the kind of righteousness that Christ calls us to.